curious, like when you do those kind of launches with new products, is it something specific that you always need to think about when it's a new product in the process of working with influencers? I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, I mean, this particular product is like a legacy brand that everybody knows. Like I would say the name and everybody would be like, yeah, like it's like McDonald's level. So it's not about necessarily like educating as much. It's like it's more about like making a splash. Like we just want to come out of the gate with excitement.
Mm.
Like the goal is just to get people excited because there's just so much noise. And even brands like McDonald's and Walmart, like they're launching new things all the time and new sales and new promotions, seasonal things. So, to stand out in the marketplace is just really difficult. And that's a great place to embed influencers because each individual influencer has their own little like microcosm of an audience. So at least you're hitting those because it's really hard to like boil the ocean, as they say, and get everybody, in the world on board. So to pick the right partners and then utilize their audiences is kind of like the approach, I guess.
Yeah.
On top of all the other like marketing things that we're doing.
Yeah. But to do that kind of like splash and making everyone talk about it, what type of creators do you pick out? Like, how do you set that up from the beginning when these huge brands, I guess, Forge, the huge ones, when they come to you, like, how do you set up the strategy? How do you pick out so you get that kind of, I guess, that buzz or, yeah.
Usually when it comes to like discovery vetting influencers, the criteria is usually set well in advance because they've been doing audience studies for so many months. Like it starts with R&D. Like it starts with the company's team that's inventing the product. Like this one's actually really interesting and I can talk about it in a couple of days. It's literally launched later this week. I like can't quite talk about it yet, but we can have another conversation once it launched. But this product was born on TikTok in a sense. And it's a legacy brand that's been around for hundreds of years, but they were seeing people on TikTok doing things with this product on their own. So the R&D team actually took that data, or it's not even data. It was just like, anecdotal insights and went to their like, development team, whatever, the R&D team, and built a product based on TikTok comments and TikTok videos. So the audience was like very clear from the beginning. It was very Gen Z, specific category, free thinkers, like, excited people. Like there was like a lot of like kind of like specific criteria. So by the time they brought in me to run the influencer piece, we already sort of knew who we were targeting, if that makes sense. And then my job is to just like hone that. So I take all the data points. They want this ages, this demographic, a mix of ethnicities, a mix of location, blah, 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 all these like data points I have to hit. And then it's my job to really like craft what that roster is going to look like and make sure I have enough men and enough women. And, we've got some really young people that are going to have like really young audiences. And that's great. But like, can't miss the 25 to 35, either. So
yeah,
it's really a puzzle of like making sure that this program has like 6, I think, influencers on it. And 6 is a great number. Like that's like a perfect.
Why?
Anything over.
Why is 6 perfect?
It's a containable number. Like it's a manageable number, but it's also enough where I can like have a bunch of girls, have a bunch of guys. Like I can mix it up a little bit. If you have like 2 or 3, it's a very like homogenous list. So that's kind of the approach. It's like I've given criteria that's based on data, and then it's my job to like bring it to life.
Yeah. But when it comes to, I'm curious now when you mention diversity, because we hear this a lot, it's a debate. Do you often see that they feel like they just must think about that? Like there's no way to skip that and just do any campaign? Or when it comes to these big, huge brands, is that a very often common criteria?
Yeah, I mean, the whole 2020 like era of people finally realizing like we need to have to, it's kind of crazy to think that like it had to happen that way, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing it did. I do think there was a period where brands were like, we need to have, more diversity. I always am like a little bit more optimistic. And again, I come from like a white person, like privileged perspective. So I can't speak not from that, but I always like tried to cast as diverse as I can. I mean, I'm speaking like, from my experience again, but it's percentages too, like the percentages of the amount of people on social media and the amount of people creating content. So sometimes your list does look way too white. And I'm like, we got to go back. Yeah. And it's just because more people are coming back through filters, because there's a lot of like white women content creators, whether that's, good or bad, there's a lot. So sometimes you do sort of need to correct for that, because if you put in criteria, you're just getting spat back out a bunch of white people, and that's not, nobody wants to look at a campaign that's all one type of person. Like, regardless of the product, that makes no sense, because your audience is many different people. So I was always sort of correcting for some of that would automatically happen. I think now we're going into it much more thoughtfully from the beginning, of like, even before we go to the databases, of like thinking about creators that we've worked with, that we've liked, like think about diversity like from the beginning. But it's important, because even if your audience is a specific group, you still don't want to just look at a bunch of the same people, diversity of gender, diversity of, LGBTQ, diversity of religion, like all of these things, in my opinion, are so important, because you're going to spark different things from different audiences. This particular program I'm running right now has, and that I don't want to like give too much away, because I feel like I'll say it and it'll give a lot away, but it's a specific group of people the brand like relates with, if that makes sense, like a country. So it's heavy on that, but it's an underrepresented group that makes sense for this brand. So of course we're going to go bigger in that category, but we did have like a couple like random, there's a couple random white women, like in it. And stuff, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I am always like, the more diverse, the better in 9% of situations.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. But I'm curious to hear also, so these huge brands, they do these splash event, campaigns, whatever we call it, but they're so big. So all the other marketing channels feels like huge, just TV. They get so much more out of it. And often the influence is such a small piece. Is it still worth for them, or what's their argument for doing this? And yours, of course, for doing these 6 people or even 60 influencers. Like, it's still a so small portion, but why do you think they still want to do it? And tell me about that.
I think that's the number one biggest misconception that influencers and talent managers, and even just like the general public, has about influencer marketing. I think people that are in it, like creators and managers where they make their money off of creators, just assume that when I like reach out to you, that like I have all this money and influencers the center of the world. And it's the exact opposite. I was just talking to a talent manager that I got connected through a friend, and we were just like catching up, having a chit chat. And I would say, and she like is more experienced, but we were kind of just like laughing about this point that like influencer is like, I think they're estimating for 2024, like $60 billion industry. Last year it was $23 billion. The year before that it was like 12. Like it's grown fast for an industry, but like 60 billion compared to TV and out of home and like paid media, they're probably in the trillions. Like 60 billion is nothing, is like a not big chunk of the advertising marketing pie. I mean, home, and I don't quote me on like specific numbers, but like grocery store, in shop, like mobile, like there's so many other pieces of digital ads, even just like organic social media, the amount of time and effort it takes to do all those photo shoots, and the amount of team members for like agility and social listening, like influencer, it's big and it's growing and it's getting bigger. And I think every year we're going to see it sort of, these other ones, but it's not the biggest piece of the pie by any stretch. And I don't think talent realize, because they get the emails, we want to work with you, here's $20,000, and they're like, whoa, I must be so important. And I'm like, we're paying 10 million for the paid media side of this. Like, $20,000 is nothing. And I think it's important to sort of like humble ourselves in this industry, because I think it's such a like buzzy industry that everyone thinks they know everything about. And I'm like, it's still a baby. Like, it's still growing. This just became a thing 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's not, we're in our infancy still. But to your question about like, is it worth it? 100% it's worth it. Brands that have not like bought into influencer marketing are like morons. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like, of course you need to be doing it. Of course you need to be part of the social conversation and being, talked about on social media by influential people. Like, you'd be so stupid not to invest some money into it. But on the flip side of that, it should not be your only marketing strategy. Like, I see these brands like AG1, all the like social media first kind of like Vital Proteins back in the day, a couple years ago was really big. And it seems, and I don't know their inner workings, but it seems like so much of their budget is just on influencer. Like, I think they might do some TV streaming, but like so much of their budget in the beginning was just every single influencer on social media was talking about them. And I'm like, it might have worked. I don't know what their like outcomes are. I never worked on any of those types of brands because I work on mostly like portfolio companies, but it's just an interesting approach because like the big brands, the big portfolio brands are really doing everything. Like, their pie is filled with different marketing approaches. So it's interesting that some of these newer companies are like really, really, really doubling down on influencers, so main marketing channel.
But if so these huge brands that you work with, what do you think? I mean, obviously you talk with them. So what do they expect if it's such a small portion or a small piece of the whole budget? Do they just do it just for like, we need to spend the money, or what do they actually expect from you and from the campaigns? And what do they get usually when you look at the results that you've got?
So high level, the two types of influencer marketing campaigns are awareness on one side and conversion on one side. That's like, very generally speaking, the two buckets. There's other things in the middle, education. If you're B2B, it could be like, more of a P2P play for partnerships and stuff. But for the most part, it's like an awareness play, which is kind of up my alley, storytelling, PR, brand marketing. And then there's a conversion play, which is more of like a growth strategy. It's more about, I don't want to say instantaneous, but like pretty instant sales. Like, it's not like in 2 years we'll grow. It's like in the next 6 months we'll, double our revenue or something. There's these like specific goals that you can measure fairly quickly. My experience is definitely in this bucket on the awareness side. And there's pros and cons. Like, awareness is an elusive term. Like, what does awareness actually mean? There's not a lot of measurement that's super cut and dry. There's social, what are they called? Like brand list studies. There's things you can do on social, like measure like followers. You can measure engagement changes. You can measure, more qualitative or quantitative things like changes in comments. Are people saving and sharing and stuff like that with intention to purchase? But on the conversion side, everything's based on like CPM or click-through rate or ROAS. Like, you've got these like actual like data points you can measure against. And there's so many pros and cons to each, because on one, it's sort of elusive. You're not really getting anything, but I always say this side is the long game. I don't know if I said this to you or if I said this to someone else when we were talking about, but it's like the Pepsi and Coke thing, where it's like everyone on planet Earth has heard of Pepsi and Coke. It's not like they need to advertise to get new customers. Like, that's not their approach. Their approach isn't, let's go out and get a new Coke drinker. Like, that's not what they're doing. They're just out there advertising so that Pepsi doesn't get more mind share over Coke. Like, they're just fighting to like stay relevant and on people's minds. Like, that's all they're doing at the end of the day. I mean, they might be launching something or they might be doing something for the holidays, but their goal isn't to be like, we're going to go to Arkansas and find a group of people that have never heard of us. Like, that's just not how it works. It's the long game. It's just remaining in the zeitgeist and remaining current and following trends and staying relevant. And then on the other side, the conversion side, it's about like a lot of new companies go this like growth route and they want conversion. And it's important for like investors to see growth. You know, there's like a lot of like other reasons why you want quick growth, but it's not really the long game because you're converting quickly. And then like, are those conversions people that are actually going to stick around? You know, are they quality conversions? When I worked in growth marketing for a short period, I learned all about the different types of conversion. There's like bot conversions. There's bought conversions that are just, paid for and they're not real. So that whole side of it is a little bit more short term and complex. But if you don't have any conversion goal at all, how do you measure that awareness is working? So they sort of play hand in hand.
Yeah, I feel like there are the young brands that they basically need the conversion to stay alive and to grow and to get more investments. And I feel like when money was free, it was a lot of, if you can call it the fake or bot. I think that was interesting. A bot, conversion. And as soon as the whole money printing stopped working, everything just, fell apart. And you look at the brands that are investing a lot on the other side, brand awareness. I feel like they have more long-term game, and they hopefully will stay for a long time too. But maybe it's just the case that the huge brands, they are so big, they have customers coming back because they've been there for a while, and they can do that play. But I feel like the smaller upcoming brands, they need to kind of do both, I guess. Well, yeah. What's your experience? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just judged the influencer marketing award show. It's like a European based award show, but it's global. And one of the awards that we were like fighting over, so you judge it and then there's like clear winners. And then there's ones that are like, you have to like actually go in a session and kind of like argue with your fellow judges over. And one of them was interesting because it was like a huge brand. It was, I forget, I can't say the brand anyway, but I'm trying to think of like a comparison. It was like I think it was like let's just say like Pizza Hut. It wasn't that, but it was like a big like chain of food. And they ended up selling something on TikTok Shop, which I thought was really interesting because you don't usually see like massive brands selling on TikTok Shop. Like, let's just say it was like a pizza keychain or something. I forget what the product was. But, and their award submission was like, we sold out. And then I scrolled down and it was like 6,000 units. I'm like, Pizza Hut selling 6,000 things is not impressive. They probably sell 10 million pizzas a day. Like, that's not 6,000 units for a brand like that. So I was kind of like, sure that they hit their conversion benchmark. They converted every single unit, got sold. But like that benchmark made no sense because, so that's where like the conversion thing is a little confusing. I mean, like I think they were launching something new and they were trying to hit the like TikTok audience. So in that case, they were successful. But for a legacy company like that, like I wasn't that impressed by it. I'm like, that would be amazing for like an Etsy shop owner to sell 6,000 units,
Yeah.
A mom that makes headbands or something. That would be amazing. But like for Pizza Hut, that's not. So I don't know. But they do need to play. There are situations where like, for whatever reason, a big, huge brand has a new product launch or a new offering and they really do want conversion and they need it for whatever reason. So then you can maybe like, there's creators that are better at converting than others too. So it's an approach of like who you work with, how often are they posting? Is it an affiliate based approach where like they're also benefiting for the sales? There's a lot of those kind of like hybrid approaches where you're paying them a flat rate, but also paying them affiliate so that they have like skin in the game to actually sell. And they're essentially like a salesperson at that point on your team.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah. You mentioned storytelling, and I know you have a PR background, so you have like both sides. Tell me a little bit more about storytelling. Why is that important? How could that look like for any type of brand? Like, tell me about that.
Storytelling. So I'm gonna sound like a philosopher, but like, I did my master's in PR and advertising many years ago, and like it was like a 2-year program. I was working during it. It was like a night program for like working adults. And I'd say it was like such a fun program. Like I wish I could like go do it again. It was great. Shout out to DePaul in Chicago. But But if I could go, or if I could summarize those 2 years of that program of learning like high level from working, advertising pros in Chicago about what all of this is about, it's marketing just equal sign storytelling. Like that's all it is. Like we make it so much more complicated. People want to hear stories. They don't want to hear boring data points. People relate to stories. Like that's what everything is. That's why when we sit down with our friends and we're like, I have a story to tell you. It's not like I met a girl, she was nice. It's like I met this girl, she was wearing a pink shirt. It was really cool out. So I put my jacket on. Like that's how we interact with humanity. Like that's just how humanity interacts. So I am a huge proponent of storytelling and good quality storytelling because it's the only way to move the needle. Like you're not going to connect with people. And that's why influencer marketing took off like a rocket ship back in 2014, 2013, as Instagram was ramping up, was because the visual aspect of it, the captions, then like a couple of years later, stories came out, literally cold stories. It allowed people this like ease of telling stories in such a, you pick up your phone and you can tell a complex story with visuals and sound. Like it's not rocket science why this industry became so popular. It's because we were like hungry for an easy way to share stories. And then a couple years later, after we all figured it out and loved it and social media became so big, brands were like, how do I monetize this? And that's kind of where it all kind of exploded. But that's the basis of it. In my opinion, that's literally all you need to know. Like I could give you a master's degree right now. It's just being a good storyteller is the basis of everything.
Yeah. But then I guess you need to also find these creators that are good at it. How do you pick them out? How do you find them? What should, if you're I guess a brand and you want to source for yourself, what should you look for to get these storytellers, I guess?
I think it's like pretty obvious scrolling someone's feed who's good and who's not. I mean, anyone with like a lot of following has got, unless their thing is like jumping off the roof and it's like shock value, there's some of those too, where they're not really storytellers. They're just like wild and crazy and it attracts, but even like cute puppy videos, like it's not like some, like for instance, like there's Instagram accounts or TikTok accounts where it's literally like a kitten. And the entire feed is just a little kitten. She's not telling a story, but people can relate. Like maybe, it's the kitten falling down the stairs. That sounded bad, but not getting hurt. Or like, getting a treat or running outside. Like that's a part of storytelling. You can be like, I used to have a kitty that did that, like it doesn't have to be someone that can sit on camera, face the video and like talk necessarily. It's, storytelling means a lot of things. It's just painting a picture of something that people can relate to, essentially. So anyone with like a decent following has done it in some way. Even the guy jumping off the roof, I guess, in some way is telling a story. So, I mean, I think, and that's not to say there's like micro creators that aren't amazing. They just haven't grown yet. You have to just kind of feel the content out. And then from the brand perspective, I mean, that's just kind of like for the general public, but from the brand perspective, one thing we do is we do look at their past sponsored posts to see how they told those brand stories. Mm-hmm. So I'm working with a girl right now who has like the craziest content. She's like a comedian, very slapstick, like everything was like, whoa, 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 it's like that type of comedy. And we really liked her. Her demographics, like on paper, were perfect. She was in the right location. She was the right age. Her audience breakdown was right. We did all the like data. It was great. But my client was like, she's a little nuts. Like, I don't know that this is going to play. She's just like really spunky and energy. And it was a lot. And we went through her feed and found a couple sponsored videos and they were crazy, but she did a really good job of sharing the RTBs, sharing all the key messaging points, really, really hitting home on the important like spawn con things, but also being her crazy, goofy self. So even though she was a little bit like, is this going to work? We were confident that the other couple brands she worked with, and also the results were good on those posts. Like we calculated the engagement and stuff. We ended up moving forward with her. So we are going to work with her. So I think, yeah. I mean, I think if someone is awesome and really good storyteller, but has never done branded work, that could be a red flag. Like maybe brands kind of haven't.
It's a risk.
Yeah.
But do you just give like a, because I guess they need to tell a story. Do you give a brief to them in a certain way, or do you try to find, like, let's say if it's Coke, like you need to just find people that obviously already drinking Coke and love it, so it will be easy for them to relate and, to create this kind of story? Or what do you think about that? Like, can you even do this if they haven't tried or love the product already?
I'm lucky because a lot of the brands I work on are like Jiffy peanut butter or like they're like Folgers coffee, where it's like, even if you don't drink it every day, you've at some point in your life, you've interacted with it. So I've been lucky with the big PR agencies because, like, I mean, I worked with like IKEA for a year. Like every single person on earth has something from IKEA. Like, and even if you don't, your friend does, or you've been in a store. Like, so I've been sort of lucky because it's not really been an issue. Like every once in a while, I'll rep a client. Like I'm trying to think, like Shark Ninja. Like I did like something with their pizza oven. Like you might have worked with Shark or have like a vacuum, but like not everyone has a pizza oven in their house or knows someone that does. So it depends on the product and it depends on the brand. Most of the brands I work with are like fairly recognizable names. But if the person has never used the product, we always try and send it ahead. I mean, I have worked on clients' products, don't nobody tell on me, but we have done it. We're sort of like, treat this as you use it. Like they actually haven't tried it, which actually isn't like allowed. Obviously, if they try it and they hate it, they wouldn't produce content. Like that would be ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretend like they loved it. But typically we like to give them like at least like 10 days, especially if it's like beauty, skincare. Like I don't work in that space typically, but like in those cases, you need to give them time because what are they going to say? Like skincare doesn't happen overnight. You need to like, But my products are like, as long as you send it and they have time to tinker around with it, they pretty much know if they like it or not. Like a pizza oven, you have to use it once and it's not complicated. But yeah, so we try to give them that like trial space. And then get their true feedback. I mean, sometimes we ask for true feedback, and we would never post something that was terrible. If they really hated it, we would just be like, we're not going to go forward with this because we're not going to pay you to advertise that this sucks. But there have been videos where like it wasn't as good as we were hoping, or like they liked it, but there was a part that they didn't like, and they felt like they wanted to share that. And sometimes we run with it because it's real and we want real opinions. But we do always have a brief. Always. Not since the really early days when we didn't know what we were doing yet, have I not had a very detailed brief. And I know some salamanders hate that, but it's important. Like you need to have guardrails. You need to have key messaging. We're paying you lots of money to represent and advertise for our brand. How could there not be a brief? So I get into like heated conversations about this because everyone's like, it performs better if there's no criteria. And I'm like, well, if there's no criteria, why would I pay you? Like, then we're not, what are we doing here if I'm not giving you some sort of criteria?
Yeah, makes sense. And as a final point, like, because you've been in this space so long, you know a lot, what trends do you see in this space? I guess in all perspectives, but yeah.
I mean, I think we're still on this massive growth track. I mean, to my point about how we're still small, like I mean, people are probably like, shut up, Katie, but everyone keeps saying it's the wild, wild west. I'm like, it's not the wild, wild west. It hasn't been the wild, wild west since like 2016. Like I don't think we're in this, like, nobody knows what they're doing. I think we're in the infancy of a very, very big marketing, piece of the pie. Infancy in the state, in the sense that like there's so much more room to grow, but there are professionals in this space that have been doing this now for a really long time. We have a lot of stuff processed out, the way that we contract, the way that we brief, the way that we vet, the way that we execute these programs. A lot of us have very, very specific processes that are like tried and true at this point. So I don't believe it's a wild, wild west anymore. But I do believe there is so much room for growth. I mean, there was a period like as the economy was starting to go bad, 2021, 2022, whatever, when it was like dipping, after the pandemic, where budgets were smaller, and all I heard all day long from talent managers is we're getting no offers. The offers are terrible. And I think that was true for a while, but I do think that that's sort of like over. In my world, I mean, I have a program that's 250K for 4 or 5 influencers. I have another program that's like 20K for 3 like micro influencers. Like my brands are giving me money to spend, and there's money out there. So I just think growth. I think I would have said last year affiliate marketing, because everyone keeps talking about how we're going to like get more into affiliate. I haven't seen much of a change over the last year. I think I was expecting all these companies to come out of the woodwork, and I haven't really seen much. I think maybe it's grown a little bit. I'm working on a program now with an agency that specializes in it. So I'm really excited to see kind of like where that has gone, because I've been very much focused on the non-affiliate world for a while. But yeah, I mean, I just think more of what we're doing, everyone that I think also one more thing I just thought of is the trickle down effect, because there are so many, like everyone's an influencer. If you want to be an influencer, you literally just have to post for a week straight and you could get 1,000 followers and potentially get a brand deal. Like that's how easy it is these days. You're just a nano influencer that can get $100 to post. Like it's very easy. So I think the trickle down of like, we've used all these big names. They're making so much money that like brands are kind of looking at the, like someone with 5,000 followers, that's an expert. I did a sponsored post on LinkedIn. I have 6,000 followers. Like that's nothing in the world, but I've been approached to do some work, which is awesome. I mean, it's so crazy, but it's like awesome. But I think we're going to see more of that, of like everyday people who are experts or beauty fanatics or, sports, they're really good at skateboarding or whatever, that aren't necessarily professionals. Do a quick post, get $100. Like it's not this high stakes. There's a lower stakes game, I think, that we haven't really tapped into fully yet. So
I think so too. Like the growth of creators will definitely just continue. And I feel like TikTok especially, they just want more creators, because if there's more creators that, want to create content, there's more eyeballs, it makes sense. So I definitely think that will grow a lot more, which will hopefully, I guess the prices maybe will be more flat. So in general, like more brands can go in and actually pay people enough for it. So it won't be like too expensive to start investing in this space. But fun, nice. I feel like you know so much, and thanks for sharing all this. It was super great and fun. And yeah, I feel like we probably can talk like 3 hours more.
I know.
But I love it. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.